Thank you very much, everyone, for having me here at Petroplastics, an incredible company that Ed and Steve have built, employing hundreds of people in the plastics sector. You might not think about plastics very often, but these products that they have literally protect medical equipments. They keep hospital bedding clean, so you don't get an infection when you're lying in bed at the hospital, God forbid. They preserve the foods that are necessary for our very survival. These are the kinds of businesses that often don't get enough notice, but who make our lives possible and enjoyable. And they've been in business for 40 years. And we're very blessed to have businesses like this, even though after the lost Liberal decade, they have been under attack by higher taxes, more red tape, blocking their operations, and an existential threat in the form of the plastics ban, which will drive up the cost of food, of clothing, and other essentials of life that require plastic wrapping and protection. Everything will become more expensive if this latest radical Liberal policy is allowed to go ahead. After the lost Liberal decade, with our economy down under America's thumb and costs and crime up, we cannot allow them to have a fourth term. We need a change with a Canada-first Conservative government. They will axe taxes, build homes, unleash our resources, and bring home the billions of dollars that have been lost so that we have the economic strength to stand up to the Americans. Now, we know that that takes a team, and we have an incredible team here. I want to thank the great Melissa Lantzman, our deputy leader, and a champion across all the GTA and all of Canada. We have Anna Roberts, BJ Powdell, Roman Baber, Don Patel, and Michael Guglielmin. They want to work to put the country first. But, of course, we have a lot of work to do to reverse the lost Liberal decade. Over the last 10 years and 3 terms of Liberals in power, much of it with Mark Carney as Chief Economic Advisor to Justin Trudeau, Canada's had the worst economic growth in the G7. We're now projected to have the worst economic growth for the next 10 years and 30 years in all of the OECD. $460 billion more has left Canada for the U.S. than has returned. That's Canadian investment dollars building American pipelines, American mines, American office towers, and paying American paychecks. I want to bring that money home. U.S. GDP per person has been 18% over the last decade. In Canada, it's been 1.4%, not per year, over the whole decade. In other words, there's been no economic growth. And south of the border, their growth has been 14 times higher. Canadian workers are better, and yet they make less, about $20,000 less per year compared to their American counterparts. Now, why is this? Well, the answer is they get less investment. If you take the total investment in the entire American economy, divided by the number of workers, it's about $28,000 per worker. In Canada, it's $15,000. So the American worker gets almost twice as much investment in tools, technology, and machines as his Canadian competitor. So how is the Canadian factory going to compete with its American counterpart when the U.S. one is adding tools and technology twice as fast? It's just not possible. And we're falling behind as a result. Our wages are down, our people cannot pay their bills, and we are more dependent on the Americans than ever before. One of the reasons is our very high capital gains tax, which punishes people for selling an old investment and reinvesting in a new one. So imagine you're a factory with a vacant piece of land. You want to sell it to a home builder who's going to provide houses to families, and then reinvest the proceeds in expanding your factory. Everybody wins, right? More homes for our youth, more production from the factory, more people working, which means more taxes going to the government. But you can't do that because you'd be hit with a massive capital gains tax on the sale of that land. So you don't. The transaction never happens, the factory never gets expanded, the homes never get built, and by the way, the government, which is trying to tax revenue out of the economy, ends up getting less because there's no transaction to tax. So in irony, everybody loses. More and more, businesses just look abroad. They send their money out of Canada, and they're rewarded for doing so. Look at Mark Carney. He moved one of his funds to Bermuda to dodge Canadian taxes. He moved his company headquarters to New York. He's growing his assets in China. Also, he can avoid paying the Canadian taxes that he and the Liberals want to impose on everyone else, all while he hides these continuing conflicts of interest from the sight of Canadians. Now, he will say all the right things in the 30 days leading up to the election, but you cannot believe him. Just this week, he was caught having plagiarized his way through university, 10 confirmed, documented examples of plagiarism, which proves that he will do anything and he will say anything to trick people into getting him what he wants. Well, what we want, by contrast, is to put Canada first. And that is why I am announcing today the Canada First Reinvestment Tax Cut. No capital gains when you reinvest the money here in Canada. What do you think? You agree with that? So let's go back to my example. The factory sells the land to the home builder. The home builder builds the homes. The factory takes the money and reinvests it immediately in an expansion, hiring more workers, adding more machines, creating more jobs, and helping us to become more independent. 100% of their sale proceeds will go back into that reinvested factory, which means they'll be able to grow more and faster. Or think of companies that have invested abroad. This would allow them to sell those foreign investments and bring it home tax-free. Think of a retiring deli owner who sells his deli and he wants to put the money to work in a safer and more secure, less active investment, the Canadian stock market, money that will then flow into companies that hire workers in this country. Well, he will be able to do that. At the end of the day, this will mean more investment. This will be like economic rocket fuel for Canada to put us in liftoff. We will soar above the Americans. We will reverse the lost Liberal decade, and make this country boom. The Americans will see the investment pouring back over the border into Canada, and it will allow us to build the infrastructure we need: pipelines, mines, factories, export terminals that will get our goods overseas, going around the Americans, making us more independent and helping build that economic fortress so that never again do the Americans have us in such a weak position as the Liberals have put us after the lost Liberal decade. It will allow more home building. You think of a small family that invests in a few rental properties. They decide to sell those 5 or 6 properties and reinvest them and to build 10 more. Well, they would be able to roll that money right in, 100% tax deferred, to build the homes of the future. It'll allow small businesses to sell an old, tired asset and reinvest it in inventing new technologies that will make our economy break through. It will mean more mines, more pipelines, more factories, more data centers, more housing, more paychecks, more economic independence. In other words, putting Canada first for a change. We will also preserve the existing lifetime capital gains exemption for small business owners and farmers who will benefit from this deferral on top of their existing exemption. Speaking of farmers, many of them will be able to sell assets to expand their farms. Or a retiring farmer might sell his farm and use the money to invest in a Canadian business. There will also be a very interesting new dynamic. When somebody sells an asset in Canada today, there is literally no extra incentive to reinvest it in Canada. It is just as advantageous from a tax point of view today, under the Liberal regime, to take the money abroad where it can get a lower tax return later on. However, with the Canada First Reinvestment Tax Cut, it is only available when you reinvest in this country. So you'll be able to invest 1/3 more of your proceeds if you keep it here than you would if you send it abroad. This will cause an economic boom that will give us the economic fortress we need. There's no way the Liberals will allow these kinds of policies to go ahead. It is the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal strategists, and the same Liberal promises that they have been breaking for the last 10 years. The only difference is they have an even weaker and more compromised leader than ever before. Under Mark Carney, a Liberal fourth term will be more of the same. You vote the same, you get the same. Mr. Carney has not only said that he wants to keep in place the plastics ban, the cap on Canadian energy, C-69, and the big industrial carbon tax that will drive our businesses abroad, he has doubled down on the radical net zero policies of Justin Trudeau. We know that the next 4 years will be worse than the last 10 if the Liberals are given yet another mandate in power. He will lie and deny. He will exaggerate. He will twist. He will try to avoid accountability for the Liberal record. But we have to have a change in this country. We need a new Conservative government that will reward work, cut taxes, build homes, unleash our resources, greenlight LNG plants, mines, pipelines, and other major economic infrastructure, repeal C-69, get rid of the energy cap, unleash production. We will be a nation that rewards strivers, builders, entrepreneurs, and workers, an economic fortress that will allow us to be stronger, self-reliant, stand on our own 2 feet, and stand up to Donald Trump. We know that Mr. Trump wants to keep the Liberals in power because they will be weak and he will be able to dominate. But we're not going to allow that. Canadians are going to take back control of their economic destiny. The last 10 years were about the Liberals. The next 10 years need to be about you. It's time to reinvest, rebuild, and recharge our country for a change. It's time to put Canada's workers first for a change. It is time to bring home our money and jobs for a change. It is time to restore the Canadian promise for a change, a promise that hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful house on a safe street under a proud flag. Canada first for a change. Thank you very much.